That first question, G of 2. Where did I put that pen? G of 2, what'd you get? Negative 1/4 or 1/4? Negative 1/4. Okay. This is optional to show 2 going in. G of 2, actually, they would grade just for the answer. But what this means, G of 2 is the area under the curve F from 1 up to 2. And you can see that's a negative because the triangle is below the axis. Another way to do this is to not put the negative there and say the H or the Y value is negative, and you get a negative that way. But either way, your final answer should be negative. I just start by saying area below, and then the components are 1. The height is kind of a funky 1/2 divided by 2. So it is indeed negative 1/4. Yes?
Do they give us the point for the formula?
They do not. This is not required. I'm a math teacher, so I am formula substitute evaluation. That one they would grade strictly for cancer. Yes?
So I guess this is just a conceptual thing.
Sure.
Isn't it G2 minus G1?
Yes.
And then, I guess I don't really get why G1 is 0 in this.
G of 1 is 0 only because it's the start. Think of it like this. I definitely do not recommend that you graph G. But if you were to graph G at 1, remember G is kind of an area accumulation function. So at 1, no area had been accumulated yet, so that's why that's 0. It's really accumulation of area from 1 up to whatever point. So 1 would be none. At 2, I would actually gain some negative area, so G at 2 that's that negative 1/4. It's not so much that I know G of 1 is some point on the curve, it's just that no area had been accumulated.
But that bottom value isn't always 0? Is it?
It is always your starting point, and so in a way of speaking, it is the starting 0. Yes. Yeah. Okay. G at negative 2. I apologize for those of you who have not seen set 56. So most of you, this next point is probably going to be hard to achieve because you weren't quite sure what to do. The idea here, whether you know it or not, is there's a bit of a problem in that the limits of integration are going from greater to lesser. That is just generally dangerous calculus. It implies that delta x is negative, and that we try and avoid. So tomorrow in set 56, you'll see that if you get limits of integration that are switched, one of the things you can do is switch them from lesser to greater and negate. I'll talk about why that is tomorrow. I don't want to get into why that is until tomorrow in the interest of time. That then was probably unknown to many of you, and so you probably are not going to have a great chance of getting this point, but that's okay. The rest of it is all things you can do. So from negative 2 to 1, it involves a triangle that's above the axis and a half circle that's below. So honors people, you might have got this. I don't know if you came from honors, but you should have had something like negative of a triangle that was 3 halves and a rectangle or a semicircle that was pi over 2. So either that or pi over 2 minus 3 halves. Now then, here's your scoring. On the AP exam, this was a 2012 question 3. This is how they scored it. If you had G of 2 as negative 1/4, basically for the answer only, no work background to that. They don't necessarily have to. You don't necessarily have to show the upper limit being put in. It's just the answer, negative 1/4. G of negative 2. That also, you didn't have to show the formulas. They would be graded completely for the answer only. So you either had it or you didn't. Usually part A is the easiest, but in this case it was a little rough, especially the second part of that question. Okay, any questions so far today? Give yourself at that point either 0 out of 2, 1 out of 2, or 2 out of 2 for part A. We'll total up at the end. G prime and negative 3. G prime at -3, you must first make the connection to F. No, nothing in this problem is about G prime. So anything you conclude about G prime is an inference you're making. You need to show your thinking. So what is G prime at -3 the same as? F of -3. Okay? You had to have shown that connection to F. If you did not have either G at prime at -3 is F at -3, or generally somewhere in your work, G prime of X equals F of X, or even G prime equals F with no argument. All those things would be okay if you cover your tush, okay? I encourage you, don't get locked into the X versus T thing. I remind you that really they are both functions of X, although there's T in there as a dummy variable. They are X functions. So one of those things had to be in there, and then you just read the graph. What is F at -3? 2. Okay? G double at -3, that requires a little more deduction. G double is equivalent to what in F? F prime at -3. That definitely had to be shown. The next to me is just good math, and you could jump to the answer there, but I would like you to communicate. How are you finding F prime at -3? It's the slope of the F graph at -3, which is 1/2, or 1 rather. You with me? It's up 2/2 there, so it's 1. Okay, so here's the grading. It was 1 point for each, but this time they did require work. You had to have connected G prime to F somewhere in your work and get 2. If you did have both of those, you do not earn that point. For G double, you had to connected G double to F prime in some fashion. This is gravy. To me, this is good work. But I don't think they would grade for it, and the answer had to be 1. So give yourself either 0 out of 2, 1 out of 2, or 2 out of 2 there. Yes? They would probably turn on for a full segment. Okay? So take off a point at some point. Okay, let's see how this guy went. Find the point at which G has a horizontal tangent, and at each of those points determine max, min, or neither. Where does something, a function, have a horizontal tangent? Where the derivative equals 0. So you should have started by saying G prime connected to F, which equals F equals 0 at, and at where? There. Now, I'm just reading the F graph, right? Those 2 points. So -1 and 1. Now let's continue on. At -1, does G, not F, I'm not looking at this graph for maxes and mins, okay? So I can't tell you how many people would say, G has a max at -2, because there it is. I mean, that's a simplistic, way out, you're not even in, okay? You're just way out there. I'm not looking at this graph. I'm looking at G, which is not shown graph. So tell me, min-max, does G have min-max or neither at -1? Max, why? Yeah, you need to have a subject. Please don't just say max at. G has a max at. X equal -1. Please don't say -1, 0. I can't tell you how many people will say G has a max at -1, 0. Why not? Yeah, I don't know the y value of G. This is not G. This is F. Okay? And it doesn't say find the coordinates, the x and y of G. It says the x. And if you say -1 to 0, you are out. That is not a point on G. That's a point on F. So please just answer the question and give no more, no less. G has a max at x equal -1 because G prime, which equals F minus, I already said it, but I'll just keep saying it, changes from positive to negative there. First derivative test by far is the easiest one. Okay, what about at -1? Neither. Why does G have neither a min nor max there? Doesn't change sign. You could say that G is decreasing then decreasing there because F is negative and negative. So it was decreasing flat, decreasing, it's just neither. So, and you say that. G has neither at x equal 1 because something along the lines of because G prime equals F does not change signs there. Now, the first 2 points were solved, and the third point was the hardest point. This is a 3-point question. Considers G prime equals 0. Now, obviously that means considers G prime equals 0 on your paper, not in your mind. You thought, well, let's say I need to find where the derivative is 0. You need to show somewhere in your work G prime equals 0. If you don't have G prime equals 0, I'm considering where the derivative is 0, then you're not going to get that first point. I feel like the connection F also has to be made. I don't know. I believe they would also grade for that. The next was, did you know where to look? Not, where the slope was 0, but where it actually crossed the x-axis. So did you say at -1 and 1? That was the second point for the problem. And then the third one was all the work of it. Did you conclude properly? First of all, did you include a subject for your conclusion? G, not it, not max. G has a max. Did you conclude max at -1? And did you say it well because G prime changes positive to negative? And furthermore, for that last point, you also had to conclude G has neither at x equal 1 because G prime doesn't change. So, all said then, that third point had a lot going on for it. Give yourself 0 out of 3, 1 out of 3, 2 out of 3, or 3 out of 3. All right, questions? D. How do you find where a graph has a point of inflection? Is it where the second derivative is 0? That's where you start looking, but it's not a justification. It's second derivative changes sign. You have to find where the second derivative changes sign. And that's the justification you'll need. So, let's go there. Point of inflections are where something changes concavity, but I have no graph to look at. So it's really where second derivative changes sign. What is the second derivative of G again? G double equals F prime, which in my mind also equals the slope of F. Changes sign at where? How many points? How about here? Does the slope change sign there? Yes. How about here? Does slope change sign there? No, it's negative then negative. How about here? A lot of people miss that one, okay? Yeah, it's changing signs from negative to positive there. That's one. And how about here? They find the sharp turns, but a lot of people forget that bottom circle one. So there should be 3 points. At x equal -2, 0, and 1, right? Because, I guess I already have my justification. I put my justification first. You could say G has inflection points at -2, 0, 1 because G prime, double prime, which equals F, changes signs. You could say because F changes from increasing to decreasing or vice versa at those points. That's not an accepted abbreviation. Okay, so 1 for the answer, -2, 0, and 1, and 1 for the justification. It is possible to get the explanation point while having missed one of those points because you maybe overlooked 0 or something like that. So give yourself 0 out of 2, 1 out of 2, or 2 out of 2, and then go to the top of the paper and give thyself a total.
So, Mr. Rick,
Yes.
you used 0, if you had justification for -2 and 1.
Then you get the explanation point. You can get, sometimes those points you tie together, but not in this case. Okay? So give yourself up to 9. Now, let's see how you did, shall we? I'm not going to have you call out your answers, but this was 2012, question 3. And the mean or the average for that score was 2.67. Now, I beg you, please, I'm there 2.67. We don't shoot for that. We don't shoot for that, okay? Let me further explain this here. This, last year's AP exam, okay, AB. The most common score last year was a 2. The second most common score was a 3. Then it's pretty equal distribution. Then a 1, and then a 4 is the least common. But they're all pretty equal. Now, that said, I got to make sure you understand. I understand that this school is rough. I mean, all these smart people, and you compare yourself to these smart people, and I know this. You're really smart. If you compare yourself to the world, or at least America, let's go in terms of math. Let's go America. You guys are really, really good at math. But not everybody is as good, and you need to make sure that as you practice these AP problems, you separate yourself from these people, okay? Some of these people, this is the full extent of what their mind can grasp. And for some, it's beyond what their mind can grasp. That's just the way they're made. That's fine. Some people are super smart, but they're in some cow town, and the gym teacher's teaching them calculus. So he's doing the best he can, but he's got 3 different classes he's trying to teach. All these different situations of the 300,000 people taking the test, you need to understand that they don't know you, that you need to make your work super clear and go above and beyond and leave nothing unsaid. Your greatest danger is that you know too much and you think, well, every moron knows it's increasing if the derivative is positive. No, not every moron knows that. Okay? So you need to be clear that you're making your work above and beyond clarity. Okay? So, if you did above 2.67, then you're doing pretty doggone well, considering we're just starting. This is one of our first practice problems. By May, if you want a 5, you need to be hitting 6s and above. Okay? And I gotta tell you, this you should by maybe April, you'll be disappointed in yourself if you get less than a 6 on this. You'll be disappointed, and you'll be shooting for 9. There is no reason that you shouldn't shoot for perfection. I really believe that. You should shoot for perfection because that's what you're capable of. Okay. That said, you can. I don't know if you noticed though. Did you see the BC score?
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah, it's not because the exam's easier. Obviously, the exam's a lot harder. It's just there's a far less heterogeneous group in BC. They're much more homogeneous. Yes.
Can you scroll down?
Sure. Wow.
Oh.
That's pretty good. Mechanics is not bad, huh?
I think they're doing physics 1 at this school, and okay.
Do they even do algebra-based physics anymore? Is that what that is?
They killed it.
They killed it altogether, or just at our school?
I think that Mr. Patel said there used to be like an AP-ish alternative
Oh,
that.
but they've
What other tests?
Yeah.
Some students do good last.
Look at how easy Chinese
They
is.
still take it, but Mr. Patel.
Geez, anybody could get a 5 on Chinese. Which one did you want to see?
Spanish language and culture. Okay, I'll take a 4.
You could get a 5. Come on. Wow, that's hard. What has the greatest 1 rate? The greatest 1 rate might be calculus. Nope.
Ooh,
Environmental science. Oh, physics has a high 1 rate. Stats, that's crazy. I could get a monkey to get a 1 on a stat test. That's ridiculous.
Percentage is a fraction.
Wow, human geography is real hard. How about that?
That's a lot of schools freshman year.
Oh, is that right?
I know
Oh.
who took that as a freshman.
That's hard to take as a college course as a freshman. Wow, that's a lot to ask.
Oh, wow, you are better than
Huh. It's interesting. Wow, not many people get a 5 in English. That's hard. Gus? That's pretty equal distribution across the board. Oh, US, you take US Gov, not conference. Oh, that's right.
Yeah, I don't be so optimistic.
Comparative politics is really cool class. You should take that. Oh yeah, wow, that's rough. Wow, fourth of the people. You guys take macro, not micro. Okay. Did we get through on the gold packet? Did we get through all that in this class? I think we got through all. The extra practice 84, I think distance and displacement. I have your classes. I think we got through it. So let's go to 55, shall we? 55, there's the problem set, but there's also a gold note sheet that I didn't go over all of it. So you might get out your gold note sheet that says set 55, replace, application that's coming off arrows, blah, 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 blah. You know what I'm talking about? Yeah. And let's look at the mosquito problem. This also is a classic AP question. One of two types. Like this or no. All right, ready? I tweaked this a little, so I could put the rubric up to this, but we'll see how you did. Okay. So you've got this island with mosquitoes on it. And they give you, I would say R is a rate of change in the number of mosquitoes. Some teachers would then have you classify R as a derivative. You could say that R is it's a rate of change in the number of mosquitoes. You could say it's like the derivative of the number of mosquitoes if you wanted to think about it that way. You with me? Yeah. Keep that in mind that it's not, I know it's not labeled as a derivative, but in my mind it really is one. So how would I show that the number of mosquitoes is increasing at times 6? They tell me it's increasing. How do I show that?
R is positive.
R is positive. So you would need to find R at 6. I'll do the calculating. I have this in my calculator here. R at 6 then is 4.437. I would report to 3 decimals, and then I would make my conclusion. What do I say? How do I say that proves the number is increasing? This is greater than 0, so the number is increasing. Okay, if you just found the evidence, but then asked the reader to make the inference, hey, that's positive, it didn't actually come out and say, because it's positive, then you probably wouldn't get anything at all. Okay? All right, yes? No. The way generally the AP exam asks for it, if they in the question ask for units, then they grade for units. But if they don't ask for units in the problem, they don't. That said, good math would be that you should. Where are the units on that R, by the way? Mosquitoes. Okay. All right. At time number 6, the number of mosquitoes, is it increasing at an increasing rate or increasing at a decreasing rate? How do I know if the rate is increasing or decreasing? The derivative. Shall I said this is calculator. Do you need to take the derivative by hand? You do not. Does it benefit you to take it by hand? No, you get no points for it. Some of these are just good. And it's a time meter, and you have all this source of error. So you should probably just, not that I'm not sure you couldn't do a derivative properly, but to be safe, you would take the derivative with your calculator and call it good. So something like negative 1.931 is what I get. You would say, hey, I found the derivative of r, report your value, 0.31. Did I say 31 or 13? I can't remember what I said. 13. Darn it. 9.13. So do we conclude that the number of mosquitoes is increasing at an increasing rate or a decreasing rate? Decreasing rate. Why do you say that? Less than 0. So the number of mosquitoes is increasing at a decreasing rate. Okay. Again, I am giving the evidence, then the conclusion. You can give the conclusion in the evidence. According to the model, how many mosquitoes will be on the island at time 31? How do you find an amount when you're given a rate of change? Fundamental theorem, yeah. You could integrate R and get change in amount. You could call it A or N. Generally, it's good math. If you introduce a new variable, you should say what it stands for. N equals number of mosquitoes. That's just proper mathematics. So, integrating a rate of change gives you an amount of change. What cases in time should I use? 31, because that's the question. What else? 0, because it's given. So, now, you might start there, the fundamental theorem. I got to tell you, with practice, most people would jump straight to this part. The number at 31 is the starting amount plus the change in the amount. You really need one of those two to be on solid footing. That's the one that I think is the best. But if you have both, it's a thought process, so that's fine too. That said, then, that's all you really had to show. After that, you go to your calculator, 1,000 plus shift plus from 0 to 31 of the function. You can see why it would behoove you to have the function in on the AP exam, because you're gonna need to recall it over and over again. You don't want to retype that whole function every time. I get 964.335. I know it says round to the nearest whole number. I'm just in the habit of giving 3 decimals, and then if I need to round. Notice it doesn't say, so many students round this improperly because they think it says, I can't have part of mosquito, so I should round up to the next biggest number. It doesn't say round up to the next biggest number. It says round to the nearest whole number. What's the nearest whole number? 964. Okay, you don't round up if it doesn't say that. It says what to do. 964 mosquitoes, and they would not break. Okay, so far so good. This is what I will do next year. I didn't intend to give you the question at the end there, but might as well go over it here. Okay, so pre-teaching of absolute extreme, and this is a lesson to come, but imagine a cube like that. Does it have a relative mass? Sure, it's right there, yeah? And it has a relative min. Would you say that is absolutely the maximum value of the function? No, surely there are others. Okay, so that's a relative max. If you close a function off, in other words, don't let it go forever but end it, well then, if a function is continuous and closed, then it must have an absolute max. Now this is surely the absolute max. What about this? Or what about the min? Where's the absolute min? At the bottom. Okay, so this is the absolute min. Now you can see that these absolute extrema are coming from two different sources. This is coming from an end point. At the end of a growth, it might be its greatest possible point. This is at a critical number, where the derivative takes a turn. You might have hit a low point. Gotcha. So what I was trying to inform you, and I might have overshot here, is that absolute extrema can only happen at an endpoint or a critical number. So when you get an absolute extrema problem, the first thing you do is state the extreme value theorem, usually is what I require. But you'll gather the candidates. Two possible places where I can have an absolute minimum number of mosquitoes is at time 0 or 31. If maybe the mosquito population grew all the way up to the end point, or shrunk right after the starting point. That could be an absolute extreme. A critical number is, generally speaking, numbers where the derivative is 0, but for this problem, what is the rate of change, r? So we don't really want to take a derivative. We want to know where r is 0. Okay? So you can find this either by calculator or analytically, just for the sake of practice. And at least in BC, I'd probably get an even split of both. The function is 5 root t cosine of t over 5. Let's say, just for the practice, we do this analytically. If I want to know whether this is 0, t equals 0 is 1, but I kind of already have that. What about where cosine t over 5 equals 0? Where's cosine equal to 0? Positive versions. Pi over 2. Where else? 3 pi over 2, 5 pi over 2, and so on, right? Now if I solve this for t, then that would be t is 5 pi over 2, 15 pi over 2, 25 pi over 2, etc. Now I only want the ones that are from 0 to 31. What is 5 pi over 2 ballpark? Just ballpark. 7, yeah. Okay. What about 15 pi over 2? 21, 22, something like that. How about 25 pi over 2? Probably too big, I agree. It's probably 75 halves. That's probably too big. So I think the viable critical numbers are those. So as far as candidates where the absolute max number of mosquitoes can happen, I would say the only possible candidates, the absolute max must be at time 0, 31, 5 pi over 2, or 15 pi over 2. Okay, now those are the places where it could happen. So now you need to know at which of those is the greatest number of mosquitoes. Let's compare to see who wins. I'm out at 0. How many mosquitoes were there at the start? 1,000. We already found in part C how many there were at 31. We found there were 964. We then find the other amounts by the fundamental theorem.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All students, high school students, you're taking the Healthy Kids Colorado survey today. You have been required by counseling for 10 hours. Please report to the cafeteria for 10 hours today. Thank you for your participation.
Congratulations to the following students that made the final round of the UNC math competition. For more information, see a math teacher. Shane Miller, Thomas Shavaria, Shalane Wayne, Helen Joe, Drew Aparicio, Cole Christie, Bailey Huss, Kenny Lou, and Jack Marin.
Yeah.
For all
Yes.
that's being bigger than the answers, and
Hi, how you doing?
calculate.
You can keep 55, you want to
Hours.
do it
There
all.
will be a slight twist in their college visit as they will be presenting an acting workshop. Appreciate it. I don't know,
Tomorrow, two college favorites, the University of Northern Colorado from Greeley and the Fashion Institute of Design and Merchandising from Los Angeles will be meeting with prospective students.
Want insider information on how to study and prepare for AP Bio tests? Come to the library during class hours, learn tips and strategies.
Senior high students, seniors, November 15th may be the deadline for your college application. Be aware of your college deadlines and plan accordingly. Take note that the Boulder early application deadline is November 15th, but be right behind with the December 1st early application deadline.
Baseball summer contracts are due tomorrow, Tuesday, November 7th. Off-season league starts today, 2:45 to 3:45 p.m.
Dazzling Jack, congratulations to the 8th grade Gold Crown Black volleyball team for winning second place in exhibition and taking home a trophy. They ended the season undefeated.
Yes.
Congratulations to our Dublin gymnast.
If you didn't turn in the gold extra
Julia
points
Kennedy,
for
that's about the individual finals. Paige Pruitt and her Lakewood High School team finished fifth in the team competition. Great job for both.
There will not be a student council meeting today. That is all your announcements. Have a great day.
So for this, I would conclude that the absolute max number of mosquitoes is 1,039 because it's the greatest of the candidates. 1,000. 164. You can just say it's okay.
Okay, you buddy? Yeah? You want a little off-season baseball?
Yep.
Building up the guns? Do you want both in baseball, or is that kind of hamper your? You help get both? Shrubs, see you.
All right. I guess this food drive is our period, and it starts next week, but I imagine you could bring in stuff earlier. This is your hour, right?
Yes.
The prize is helping your fellow mankind.
I think that's the prize.
But
Single
apparently,
stick of gum for all.
yeah, you get to choose among all the pumpkin tacos.
You put everything in plastic.
Yeah.
You eat the aluminum can.
Yeah. All right. This is.